You're a prominent flat earther, probably, possibly one of the most prominent ones. That's kind of circulating around there. Is it fair to say that you're kind of a full blown conspiracy theorist in a broader sense, as in flat Earth may be where you're at now, but there's probably a lot of other conspiracy theories that you subscribe to?
Uh, yeah, I was into a lot of different conspiracies, but I didn't necessarily call myself a tinfoil hat type of guy. I just had an opinion on just
Right.
about every conspiracy you could think of. And then once I got into flat Earth, everything else became second tier,
Hmm.
second shelf. I just didn't care as much because flat Earth was so big and so encompassing that that's really where I focused my efforts.
Right. So, are there any conspiracy theories that you might actually say you think are bullshit? Just like that's wacky. That nah, don't buy it.
It really runs the gamut. I mean, there's some, my some of my favorites would be 9/11, Pearl Harbor, JFK, the moon landings, ones that I like. Others, did Elvis have Bigfoot's baby? Probably not.
Yep.
But at the same time, could there be dinosaurs swimming around Loch Ness? I'm not going to completely shoot it down. The thing is, because once you get into flat Earth, it opens up your mind for a whole bunch of other things. It makes you revisit a lot of other conspiracies.
Hmm.
So the criteria I usually give for any good conspiracy is, would I do it myself or would I have done it any differently than the powers that be? I put myself in their shoes
Hmm.
and I say, okay, why were they doing it? Were they doing it for the greater good? And would I have done it the same way? And if I would have done it the same way, then yeah, that's legit in my book. I like because I'll tell people, I'll go, yeah, this is why this conspiracy is happening. It's not because of a super horrible, sinister side of things. It's because powers that be make decisions for the greater good sometimes.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Um, what's the gateway theory that kind of led you in? My kind of following the breadcrumbs of what would lead someone down the flat Earth rabbit hole. As far as I can trace it, it seems to and so begin with the moon landing is fake theory. Would that be
Right.
fair to say?
That's one of them, sure. The moon landing is definitely a litmus test that we throw at people. If you, especially in this country, it's really weird because it's a home team type of thing. So
Hmm. Yeah,
for
of course.
Americans, it's not considered necessarily sacrilege anymore because it's been 2 generations since the moon landing. But yeah, if you believe, I mean, in fact, I talked to a woman the other day who is an astrophysicist, and she goes, "Don't you dare bring up the moon landings to me." And I'm going, "Why not? That's where we start."
Yeah, 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 yeah.
If we have to go after the moon landings because they have not aged well. For me, that wasn't the gateway. The moon landings, because the moon landings have been talked about in the United States for ever since the mid '70s.
Right.
Ever since we shut down the moon program in 1972, people way before the internet, people were walking, nerds especially,
Hmm.
going, "Hey, the math doesn't really work on this," and they're doing all sorts of fun calculations. They're saying there's something wrong. For me, it was the hollow Earth theory. That's what got me
Hollow.
into it.
Ah, right. Is
Hollow
that
Earth.
like a David Icke kind of territory?
Kinda,
Yep.
kinda. That there could be civilizations living beneath us,
Yeah,
which
I've heard of this one.
wasn't much of a stretch for me. And when I was looking into it, that's when I ran into Admiral Byrd, the United States Navy guy who spent most of his career in Antarctica. That's the part that kind of led me there
Hmm.
because I was looking at, he was supposedly flew to the North Pole in 1926, and the myth goes that he found some hollow Earth entrance, journey to
Yeah,
the center
I've
of
read
the
about
Earth
that. Yep.
type. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that's pretty cool. Where does that lead? It didn't lead anywhere. It led to Antarctica. Where the United States military just sent him out in 1928 to Antarctica, and that's where he spent the rest of his entire career, was
Hmm.
flying around in freaking circles out there looking for something, and that's what led me down the path.
So that would be a hollow Earth theory. Would that contradict the flat Earth theory? Like flat
No,
Earth
no,
a bit
no.
more
It
revised, or
it dovetails pretty well. I didn't think it would in the beginning, but here's the thing: most people don't realize how little we need as a civilization to survive. How much space?
hmm.
Because 95% of our civilization lives between sea level and only 1 mile up.
Right.
5,000 feet, give or take. And so, what if you had a cavern that was 10 miles high? That's as high as airline travel. 20 miles high would be as high as spy planes. So, even if you had a cavern that was 50, 100 miles high, you could put a civilization in there very, very comfortably,
Hmm.
which then leads to the question that's like, how do you know we're not in one of those right now?
Yeah.
How do we know we're not subterranean?
So that kind of would that kind of explain why you've settled on the glow dome kind of model of a flat Earth? Because it seems like there's a lot of disagreements within the flat Earth community, at least that I've kind of noticed, of what it
Yeah,
is that we're actually on.
I settled on the dome side of things mostly because of, well, one, because of the ancient cosmology references. Just about every culture drew a snow globe back
Right.
in the day. I mean, that seemed pretty easy. And I'm not going to say that I got into it because of the biblical side of things, the whole firmament, from Genesis type deal. For me, it was an air pressure thing because how would we design? How would we build it now? And we would always build it with some sort of dome if we were going to build one ourselves. Again, the Truman Show, which is you build basically a sports stadium, a covered stadium, 20 miles wide. How many people could you put in there, and how many people could you trick? The funny thing about Truman Show is one person, please.
Mm.
You could have put 1,000 kids in there, and as
Yeah.
long as they were all not itching to go explore, you'd probably be doing pretty well. And the dome thing worked out pretty well for us, mostly because of the air pressure issue.
Okay. Right.
So yeah, and most of the flat Earth community goes with the dome side of things. There's at least 25-30% that don't go with dome.
Mm.
They just, but most of that is a personal preference. Most of that's because they don't want to they don't like being fenced in. They
Right.
don't like, it's like, they become claustrophobic. It's like, man, there shouldn't be any limits. It should be all free. We should be free, man. It's like, come on.
Do you think
It's
that's
like,
interesting? How people will decide what they think the Earth is based on their kind of, I guess, some subconscious preferences of how they
yeah,
want it to be. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
do
yeah.
you ever question your motive about the globe, the snow dome thing? Is that how you want it to be, or
No, no, not so much because I don't really have a personal preference. So like some people said, well, you're turning the solar system into a one-room apartment, like a studio apartment. I go, yeah, but it's a really nice studio apartment.
it's
It's
pretty
it's
good?
quite well appointed.
Mm.
So for me, it's quite big enough, and even if it was enclosed, no, I have no personal stake in it. It's just like, look, it's well designed. I mean, the thing is very, very well designed. So I'm not gonna, look a gift horse in the mouth.
Mm.
It's like getting a new BMW.
Right,
Y- You
right,
know,
right, right.
people can complain and having somebody complain because it doesn't have a sunroof, or it
Yeah.
does have a sunroof, and it's like, what? You got it for free. What are you complaining about?
So I guess the kind of physical structure that we're on, that would be the general consensus for the flat Earth theory, would be a flat plane.
Yeah,
So kind of uh, I think in the documentary that you're in, which is Behind the Curve, there's many illustrations of this.
yes,
So it's kind of the map that we see it is more kind of curved around, North Pole being in the center,
right.
South Pole being a huge ice wall around the edge.
Give or take, but we don't even really call it an ice wall. The ice wall was kind of picked up by the media, mostly because of Game of Thrones. Didn't do us a lot of favors.
Right.
The other movie that didn't do us any favors was Thor,
Haven't
because of
seen
the
it.
whole cosmic waterfall. Because Asgard was this flat disc that was basically just sitting in space.
Right.
In this other dimension with the water constantly falling off, and people said, "Why does the water fall off?" And it's like, for the same reason it doesn't fall off, when you're in a lake. It's
Right.
because it's surrounded on all sides. And what I try to tell people, I go, don't think of it like a snow globe or something with an ice wall around it. You're in a building with
Mm.
walls and a floor and a ceiling, and it's really, really big. And inside this building is a giant saltwater lake. And where the Antarctic, where the one of the biggest misconceptions is where Antarctica starts. The coastline of Antarctica, that probably goes in thousands of miles past what we have on any maps, including our own, the one that the Flat Earth puts out there. One of my friends says, if you're going to do TV things, you really should have the white part of the Antarctica be really much, much bigger. I go, yeah, but I can't fit it into my suitcase if I make it that big.
Yeah. So I suppose
So
what you're kind of putting forward is more just a conceptual illustration rather than this is how it is.
say it one more time.
Sorry, I said I guess what you guys are putting out there, those images, is more of a conceptual illustration rather than
Oh
how it
yeah,
is.
yeah. It's more conceptual than anything. In fact, one of our drawbacks of the images that we put out there is the sun and the moon, for example, because people say, well, if the sun's right there like that, then you should be able to see it from everywhere at all times. And I go, yeah, that's not what the sun looks like. Unfortunately, the sun in our model is so small that because man, it's about maybe 50 miles wide, and the maps that we show are 20,000 miles wide. So this thing would just be a pixel on
Hmm.
this thing. So the only way we can even illustrate the sun is to make it like almost 1,000 miles wide.
Right.
And but then people look at it and go, whoa, it's freaking huge. You can see it everywhere. It's like, yeah, I know, but that's because we can't make it any smaller because if it was the size we say it is, then you couldn't see it anyway, from that high up.
So what is the
But
sun?
yeah.
What is the sun then?
What is it?
Yeah.
Oh, the sun would be just basically an incandescent light bulb that's spinning above us like a mobile above a child's crib. And the moon would be a LED nightlight,
An LED
which,
nightlight.
yeah, which is about the same size as the sun and by the way, has no relationship to the sun really at all in terms of, the reflective qualities. So when people say, "Oh, the moon, it's getting its light because it's being reflected off the sun," it's like, no, it's self-illuminated. We can show this all day with point and click thermometers, and I didn't even think that was true. Again, work in progress. Where and I'm not going to convert it to Celsius for you, but so like it's 80 degrees in the sun and it's 70 degrees in the shade because some whatever the object is blocks some of the sun rays. Well, if it's the moon, it's the exact opposite. And I
Okay.
didn't even think this was possible. I've tested it myself. So if it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the moonlight, it's 60 degrees or warmer in the moon shade, up to 13 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. And it's like, okay, what does that prove? I go, it doesn't prove a flat Earth, but it blows away the relationship between the sun and the moon because you're basically the moon is generating a cold laser light which we can actually replicate now. I didn't even know that if you change the frequency on lasers, you can actually make them generate a cooling light. Not, you can't turn things into ice cubes instantly, obviously, but you can make it colder. So the question is, why is the moon giving off this light?
How do you
Unless
test
you
that?
it's easy. Find any objects in the wait till the moon is high in the sky.
Hmm.
Get a point and click. There's three different ways you could do this. You could do a point and click infrared thermometer, buy it at a local hardware store for like $20. And they're usually used to test engine parts and asphalt and stuff like. Didn't even know what those damn things were for.
Or coronavirus?
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know what? You
Right
can
at your
test it
forehead.
for the
Yep.
virus. Yeah, you know what? I bet you can't even buy them now
Yep.
because they're being sold out. I don't think they were necessarily meant for medical though. I think it was more industrial. I think you can. Well, who knows nowadays? People are probably buying them off the shelves anyway.
Yep.
They're not medical. But if you point at the moonlight and then you point at something in the moon shade, you will see this big temperature difference.
Wouldn't there be a
You can also.
whole bunch of different varying factors though that would kind of
Oh
I mean
yeah, yeah.
that's not
I would
exactly a
have thought so.
controlled experiment.
Oh no, we've done the controlled experiment versions of this. I mean, you can do it, just yourself, but you could also do it with glasses of water and copper strips with, hooked up to temperature gauges. You can do it with one of the most recent guys, and there's some wonderful videos on this. One of the guys, it wasn't even ours. He was using predator vision
Hmm.
from photography, and he was showing the color patterns. He's going, yeah, look, and he didn't even know. It's like holy smokes, and he just keeps going back and forth and. The one thing though, which I thought was, and I'll take credit for this one, which was because I asked, I go, what happens if you take a magnifying glass to moonlight? Does it get warmer or does it get even colder? It gets colder. It even gets colder with magnified. So you can do moon shade, moonlight, and magnified moonlight, and just move your way down the scale.
So you're saying if there's a full moon and you're
Yeah.
getting the natural light from the full moon, you could get a
Yep.
magnifying glass, kind of concentrate the light, and it will create a
It'll
cool,
even get
concentrated.
colder than the regular moonlight. Yeah. It's fascinating.
I might have to
Again,
test you on that one.
you should. I
Yeah.
mean, it's. I honestly, I'd been into flat Earth for a year, and somebody called me up and told me this, and I go, "Get out of here!" And I'm a flat Earther. I'm going, "Get out!
Mm.
Get out! It's stupid." But again, does it prove a flat Earth? No, but it just destroys the relationship between the sun and the moon, unless some can explain somebody to me that the moon is actually converting the radiation from the sun and then making it negative,
Mm.
which defies physics as far as I know, because it's like shining a flashlight on your wall and cooling lettuce on the reflection.
Right.
It can't be done. But anyway, it's one of those 5 points. The scientists hate me bringing it up
Okay.
because it's so new.
I
They're
haven't
like,
haven't that one's new to me. I have not heard that. I thought I'd
again, people. I love human beings because we tend to we do a lot of stupid stuff. But as you can imagine, like so many of our scientific things are done by accident anyway.
Mm.
And this is one of those things. It's like, what happens? They're pointing this thing at everything.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's what they found out. Anyway.
Well, if these are just light bulbs, and I guess, do you have any idea what the dome would be made out of? That would be above us, holding us in. Is that like a glass, a plastic, a?
No. It's a dealer's choice to be sure, but whatever it is really, 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 really strong. Because we were trying to bust through it, the United States and Soviet Union, for 4 years. I mean, really just trying to crank through that thing with atomic weapons. And if you can't get through with something with megaton, you're not getting through it.
Where's the proof of that?
Oh, high altitude nuclear testing. That's not secret information at all. For 4 years,
That they couldn't get through. They couldn't get through a barrier.
Let's put it this way. Give me a reason why the United States and Soviet Union, for their atomic testing from 58 to 62, were firing only up. They didn't do ground tests. They didn't do water tests. They didn't do anything. They just kept firing up. Around the same time that Admiral Byrd supposedly figured out where this place was. And again, they were doing one of the qualifiers of what I think is a conspiracy. It's like, look, if I would have done the same thing, it's like, oh yeah, I'm on board with this. So if you all of a sudden find out in the late 50s, because let me qualify another thing, which is this is one of those conspiracies that's actually relatively new compared to other conspiracies. Yeah, it's an old theory. But what I'm saying is even our best and brightest didn't figure it out till almost 1960 because we just didn't have the tech to do it. We didn't even have decent planes until 50 years ago, And so if you figured out in almost 1960, that all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, the world isn't what we think it is. What's the first thing men would do? It's like, hey, there's a wall. Get the cannon. They're going to try to bust through it. And the cannons aren't working. It's like, what do we got? Just keep up in the ante.
Yep.
And that's what in the first couple shots. In fact, the first couple shots were brilliant because they were low megaton. And this was back in the day when megaton was a pricey proposition. And then everything else after that was medium kiloton range. And they just kept firing up. And I knew exactly what they were doing. They were mapping out the sky. And it's like, okay, let's see what the dimension. How else would you measure the dimensions of this damn thing? You just keep firing rockets up and detonate them, crash some and detonate others until you get sort of a rough, kind of like paintballing it.
How come there's no blemishes on it? If they've been smashing bombs on it,
I don't know. Can you make a blemish on a unified field or an electromagnetic frequency or a heavy element or a heavy water? I don't know. Whatever it's made out of, though, it's better than us. It's better than our stuff. And by the way, I don't think they've ever stopped trying.
Okay.
Meaning, after atomic weapons, they're like, well, brute force isn't going to work. What else you got? Oh, you got this HARP project, weather modification, but maybe we can, tune it to something else. Like, that's not working. What else you got? Well, we're working on this CERN thing. Maybe we can just open up a doorway and go through and come out the other side. Why not?
So you think that all these, I guess, the powers that be, they're trying to figure it out. They didn't create it. They're actually trying to work out how to get out.
Oh yeah. No, we had nothing to do with this at all. This predates us. This is straight out of the movie Contact. One of the best lines, most humble lines in Contact was
great film
when she said, did you make it? And he flat out goes, we didn't make it. We don't know who did. Who made the system that she was flying through. And that's what I think we're looking at here. You go to our powers that be, our highest government, be like, we have no idea.
So this isn't an Illuminati conspiracy. This is a
no.
bigger than that.
No, yeah, the Illuminati, they wish. This is one of those things where the Illuminati is just all any of the secret societies, and I don't. Great thing about conspiracies is nobody knows who's the top dog. I mean, you ask
Yep.
any conspiracy guy, it's like, is it the Bilderberg Council of Formulation? The Rothschilds, the Illuminati, the Vatican, goes on and on and
Yep.
on. If the Illuminati and any of these groups, all they're trying to do, all they've been doing for the last 50, 60 years, is keeping it a secret. That's all they're doing. Is like, okay, we're going to hold on to this thing until we can figure out a way to introduce it to the public. Because if you would have told everybody in 1960, it wouldn't have gone over well. Because the civilization's already been built. Civilization, what might be one of your questions, which is like, why not tell people? Why keep it a secret? It's like, well, if you do, civilization, the main structure, the main core of our civilization has been built for centuries. It's not what they have to gain from it, it's what they have to lose. So academically, all your physical sciences would have to be retooled, and that's every university in every country. That's a nightmare. The economic markets, I mean, come on. This little virus that's happening, it's destroying the markets. It's all over the place, and that's a virus. Or the big thing is religion, believe it or not. You're talking about the five major religious houses of this world: Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. And you're asking them, oh yeah, don't do anything stupid like come back at science and want revenge. That's a tall order, because religion's been taking a pounding for 5 centuries. So that's really what they have to lose, and that's kind of where we are right now.
So the whole motive of this, of keeping this giant secret, is not financial. It's just
No, it's
keeping
more
the
power. It's
just
more
keeping the
power than
people
financial.
just keeping the people
I mean,
working.
Yeah, can you put a price on your own civilization? I mean, yeah, you might be able to profit from it, but this thing is bigger than money. Meaning, let's put it this way: the Antarctic Treaty, a perfect example of that. So Antarctica, the early expedition said the place is just made out of money, right?
Hmm.
There's a mountain range made out of coal, there's uranium, there's minerals, there's oil and gas. Billions upon billions and billions of dollars. Everyone was ready to carve this thing up. And then all of a sudden they said, you know what? Not worth it. Not worth the hassle. Because let's say you take British Petroleum and you put them down there. Doesn't take long before a helicopter, plane goes off course. And, you don't want to take that chance that all of a sudden they see something they shouldn't have seen,
Hmm.
whatever it is, because then it's a loose end. Then what do? Do you bribe them? Do you get rid of them?
Right.
How do you explain this? And then, it's a slippery slope, because that's just one oil company, to where somebody came along and said, you know what? The money's not worth it. It's not freaking worth it. Shut it all down. And so they locked down Antarctica for all time. You can go down there if you're a scientist
Hmm.
or if you're a military scientist. But no corporation is allowed to set shop up there ever.
I've had a friend that's been to Antarctica, and he was posting.
The,
I've got a friend who has been to Antarctica, the South
oh
Pole.
yeah, no, you can go.
Mm.
You can go to Antarctica. No
PK,
question.
shout out to PK. But yep.
Oh yeah, no, you can go. You can have your picture taken with penguins. You can spend the 10,000 pounds or whatever it is.
I know it's not cheap. I don't think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But as a corporation, what blew me away was it went everything that we were as a civilization. Look, everyone knows, especially in the capitalism world, which is most of it, that everything runs off of greed and power and money. So not only, let's say you had a country that fired up tomorrow and you became an economic power. The second you become an economic power, a piece of paper is put in front of you and says, yeah, by the way, you can't go to Antarctica. And you're like, what? For how long? Forever. Nobody does. And it's like, why? It's national security, whatever reason they want to throw at you.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that treaty isn't even up for debate until 2041. It's the only unbroken treaty in the history of treaties. Nobody owns Antarctica. Now they can come by and say, oh yeah, there's sliver of this and sliver of that. But come on, if you're the head of, here's the part that really kind of pushed me. It was my little tipping point. But now, before I went all in, which was, not only is British Petroleum not allowed to set up shop there, they're not even allowed to talk about it. You'd think that, lobbying, we have lobbyists in the United States that just spend gobs of money, just throw them at politicians. We can corrupt a politician in 2 seconds. And yet The British Petroleum doesn't run a full page ad in the London Times for the last 30, 40 years saying how great it would be for us to go down to Antarctica. Nope. At some level, somebody is told by whoever, minister of defense or whatever, it's like, yeah, if you ever think about doing this, don't. And that's all there is to it. Just don't. And it's a matter of national security. And that's it. It's just a blanket coverage. Nobody even questions it anymore.
You don't think that could be explained away with, things like preservation or,
I would have thought that too, and I put that in my original clues, which was like under the guise of environmentalism. Sure, why not? Except the Greenpeace, one of the early people, that wasn't even founded until the 70s, and it was really, really small. This was back in 1959. So environmentalism, I can tell you right now, from where we were, it wasn't even a word.
mm,
We burned things down. We could care less. It's like gas was 30 cents a gallon. It's like we
right.
just went through it. So no, I'm sorry that it just we. Let me give you another quick example. In the United States, I don't know what they do. I think they do a little bit down in your neck of the woods, but the whole fracking thing, you've heard
Hmm.
of it,
Yep.
obviously.
Yep.
Yeah, we can frack in somebody's backyard tomorrow if we want to up here. We can just pay. We just pay off people. We just give them briefcases full of money, and we can start fracking, right? And that is destroying everything. The West is just pockmarked with that stuff. And yet those same companies can't even talk about going down there. Yeah, remember that's fracking in somebody's personal backyard.
Right.
Antarctica, there's no plant life, there's no animal life. I'm not counting the penguins. No animal life, there's no indigenous populations, there's just nothing. It's just this weird 14,000 foot high plateau of snow and ice.
I mean, that could be because no one owns it, though. I mean, you can't just go to, well,
Yeah,
it's
but
not a
why is it?
landmass, is it? It's just ice. So
Okay, let me give you one more. Well, no, it is landmass.
I thought the
I mean, yeah,
North Pole was landmass and the South Pole was not.
no,
I'm probably wrong. Sorry. Yeah,
it's
opposite.
no, it's the opposite.
Okay,
No,
sorry.
it's okay. A lot of people confuse it. In
Yep.
fact, the bigger question is like, why isn't there a landmass in the North Pole? But we won't get into that. But in the South Pole, like Admiral Byrne, he went on national television. I included it in one of my clips. You can find it. It's really easy to find. And he was worried that people were actually, your point of like nobody owns it. He was worried that people were going to start fighting over it because of all the resource. There was at least 9 countries down there when he was down there in the late 50s. Russia needed, I'm sorry, Soviet Union needed the resources. UK needed the resources, especially after World War II. Everybody, we love resources, and yet nobody, it's like literally the treaty was put in place. Nobody even argued it. They're like, yep. Everyone, it was like, at 1 year, it was like, oh, this place is great. We're going to slice this baby up. And then 2 years later, it's like, yeah, everyone's got to get out of here. Nobody ever come back. And we're going to put a padlock on it.
Okay.
Nobody ever comes down here. It's like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Roll
Okay.
along with it.
I'll have to.
Anyway.
Yeah. No. Well, what about melting ice caps? Is that all bullshit? Climate change.
Yeah, it's so weird. I have never gotten so many questions in the last 2 years. First 2 years I was doing this, nobody ever asked me about climate change. Now everybody's asking me, do I think it's real? Yeah, I do. I absolutely think it's real. But I think it's real for a completely different reason, in that if it's an enclosed system, if it's a building, then it makes way more sense. Because, especially just like the term greenhouse gases. Doesn't that term make more sense if it's an actual greenhouse? Because then the gases don't go anywhere. They just kind of sit in here and make it heavier and heavier and heavier. And no different than, and everything would get wild. It'd be like no different than putting a propane lantern in your car when the air conditioning's running. Well, one propane lantern, your car air conditioning is going to, one, work harder, and there's going to be weird little hot and cold spots in your car based on this lantern. Now put another one in, another one in, another one in. Now, granted, that's an exaggeration, but the point is everything makes much more sense. So, is the ice system melting? Yeah, probably. Is it getting warmer? Probably. Even though they got rid of the global warming term as fast as they possibly could because it's a scary term and nobody, that's straight out of science fiction movies. Nobody likes hearing that term. Now, if we are in a building, then the system is going to adjust. The automated system is going to adjust. The water system is going to adjust. The jet stream is going to adjust. It's going to try. But I don't think it can compensate completely for it, which is why we have the weirdest weather all the time now. And it is, of course, it's getting warmer.
Right.
And people can fight over that all they want. Unfortunately, it's a bigger issue, which is, again, because civilization's already been built, can you shut everything down to the point where you can reduce the damage or reverse, what has been done without taking civilization back 100 years? I don't know. Maybe.
Well, if the ice caps are melting, is this so that would be a threat to Antarctica, which everyone's protecting, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. It
So
would be a threat,
why
sure.
why would the powers that be apart from just keeping business as usual? Why would all the right wing, which the world is kind of majority right wing at the moment, why would they be denying it, saying it's rubbish, it's fine, business as usual? Let's melt these ice caps. If they're the
Why?
people
Okay,
in
why?
charge, why
What?
would
Okay, kind. The reason why they would deny it, if I heard your question right, is why make it business as usual? Why keep going down this destructive path, right? Because kind of like the same reason why we didn't even figure out what this place was until almost 1960. And then, I mean, look how long it took for us before we started even looking at the fluorocarbon issue and the carbon dioxide issue, and all of a sudden say, hey, we might be actually causing some damage. I mean, for God's sakes, we told people in this country that cigarettes were great for like 20 something years.
right?
And then it's
Yep,
like,
yep.
oh, hey, yes, they aren't great. So when it came to Antarctica, I think they realized eventually there was an end game, which was eventually sooner or later you're going to have to release to the public what's going on, and or not, or collapse the whole thing. But I think it was more a stall than anything else. Why shut down industry? I mean, come on. If you ask anybody, what the greatest invention was in the history of mankind, what made the most impact, most of the people, I would hope anyway, would choose the internal combustion engine. Well, there's your problem right there. I mean, internal combustion engine, which launched our civilization to new heights, also would be our downfall, because the byproduct of it is, well, nothing good.
Right. Okay. So basically it's greed. Basically it's they're peddling that narrative of climate change is rubbish because they just want to keep making money for the economy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, big business. There's a something I hate using, but it's true, and that is the lawyer's rules still apply, which is it's a lawyer's rule world now, and that is you deny, you deny, you deny, you deny until they absolutely have you, and only then, maybe, then you fess up. Again, the cigarette's a perfect example. They fought it. They knew full well. They fought it. They fought it. They fought it. They with threw gobs of money at it, and only at the end, when they knew they were going to lose, did they lose. And they or how, here's one of my other favorites. We'll take it to a micro level. Lance Armstrong,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant example. Lance Armstrong won title after title, and year after year, every press conference, they were just grilling him, saying, "Are you cheating? Are you cheating? Are you cheating?" Right? No, no, no. And then after 7 years, finally, when one of his drug guys ratted him out, and they
Mm.
absolutely had him, only then did he come back and say, "Yeah, yeah, I was lying the entire time."
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, totally.
So look,
But I mean, he's got his whole livelihood to protect there. But I think what I'm getting stuck on at this, if there's a global conspiracy that is protected by the powers above, so
yeah,
above government, Illuminati, Bilderbergs, whatever you want to call them, I would have thought that it would be in their best interest to shut these right wingers up who want business as usual. I would have thought that if they've protected this enormous conspiracy theory, made up all these laws of physics to support it, everything, I would have thought they'd probably have their hands on the politicians a little firmer than business as usual. Let's melt it all down, and it seems a
it,
little lazy from the Illuminati's. They need to
it's
work
it's
harder.
not. No. I gotcha. I gotcha. It's not a bad idea. No, I know where you're going with this, and I think honestly, I don't think it was a kind of like the flat Earth, how dome or dono or no dome. I think there was probably disagreement within. Let's just call them the Illuminati,
Hmm.
within some of those meetings.
Right.
I think there were disagreements on how exactly things were going to move forward or not to move forward. It's like, what do you do? Do you cut back civilization and not take technology to a certain level? They'll say, well, the argument is, do you keep progress going even though full well that the progress will ultimately mean your doom, or do you subvert and stagnate progress to where you're just kind of simmering and you're not really achieving it? Men with power always want more power. And
Right.
the empire, they want the empire to be bigger, and they want things to branch out and to create. I think if it was just me, let's say I was part of this, if I wanted to create a new world order, the only way you could really do that is to make take civilization as far as you could, let some sort of event burn down the parts you didn't like,
Hmm.
and then what was or was left, well, maybe you could create some shiny gleaming future out
Would
of
that
that.
be what maybe COVID-19 is? Or I want to
Yeah,
ask you about
well,
what your
no,
opinion.
let's bring it up. No, no, I have been really big on saying this last 3 weeks in different podcasts, which is, look, I have never seen. Okay. First and foremost, I think that COVID-19 is just a precursor for another event, because everything that's been done with the virus, I'm just going to call it the virus,
Hmm.
is to facilitate one thing and one thing only, and that is to keep people home. Everybody home. The kids go home. The college kids go home. Sorry, university kids.
Hmm. That's fine. Yeah.
You don't go to work. You're not going to the bars or the gym or church. There's nothing open. I mean, literally, as of right now, in fact, the podcast I'm going to do on Tuesday, I'm literally going to call it half of the world is on house arrest right
Mm.
now.
Yeah.
And that's true. I mean, you've got 3.5 billion people at least, especially since India kicked in. They're
Yeah.
1.3 just on their own.
I worry for India. I really worry for India.
I mean, but the thing is, it doesn't act like anything. It's the one thing the movies get right. It doesn't act like, it acts just like a flu, a variation of the flu. And I'm not trying to be callous here and saying that you can put a price on human life. You absolutely can, unless it's your family members, and then you can't.
Right.
We've done it war and business. I can give you all sorts of examples.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
but,
I agree.
But
I mean,
the hype behind this. Look, in the United States, we what hit 1,500 people out of a nation of 330 million, and America is closed. We've and I've been trying to give perspective to people. I've gone, look, 9/11. Don't care what you think about it. 3,000 people died. Everything was still open. Right? Yeah, fine. We closed down flights for a few days for obvious reasons, but the rest of America was open. We all went out to the bars and like, yeah, it sucks to be in New York. Threw them back. That's what
Yep.
we did. 50. I don't care if it's 10,000, unless it hits mid 5 digits.
Mm.
It means nothing. Nothing, because it is a smokescreen for something else. I firmly believe. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I believe there's an event that this is being set up for, something to where everyone is supposed to be home, because I'll give you the example of why. Because people panic less when the general public is home, when the family unit isn't home. I'll give you a quick example, which is there was an earthquake, let's say 10 years ago, in Washington, D.C., of all places. Pretty big earthquake, enough to where like the Washington Monument was cracked type deal. It didn't fall over, but it was cracked. What was interesting what happened that morning. What happened that morning was instantly, as soon as the earthquake happened, every mother called the schools. Every mother called every school. It was like, where's my kids? Where's my kids? And because of that, all the phone lines jammed up instantly. And then what do you think happened? As soon as the phone line jammed up, it's like, I can't get there. They put the phone down, they got into their car, and everyone jumped onto the freeway at high speeds, and all the freeways jammed up instantly. That all happened in about 30 minutes. Imagine that happening on a national scale. You don't want that happening. So whatever's happening now, whatever's going to follow this, whatever it is, the event, I just called the event, this is the reason why. The virus is being overhyped deliberately. If you want to call them by the powers that be, that's fine. Deliberately, and people are buying it. They're absolutely. Look at the UK. I mean, how many countries? I can't even list off all the countries that are on lockdown. Right?
Yeah.
Basically, all of NATO, India, Russia, China. We have no idea what the hell's going on in China.
Yeah.
The only ones that aren't are like all of Africa and most of South America. How do you lock down them anyway?
Yeah.
So
it is a real virus. It is a
do I
real
think
virus.
It's a real virus?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, why not? I mean, a lot of people also don't know that this is COVID. Was it COVID-19? There's a whole bunch of coronaviruses out there that have been there for, some have mild effects, some have stronger respiratory effects. You can look at the back of a can of Lysol, for example, the disinfectant spray, and it'll tell you right on the label. It's like, oh yeah, really good at stopping coronavirus.
Yeah. I've
Way
seen a few
before
things
this
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been around. Do I think it's real? Sure.
Are the numbers
Sure I
real?
do, but the what?
The numbers? The death toll, the infections, do you reckon that's all being faked?
Tough to tell because
So I'm not
right
trying to
now,
Alex Jones you. I'm not trying to,
no, 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 no. It's okay. No,
just
I have
curious.
mixed feelings on it because for the first 100 deaths in the United States, we weren't showing anybody.
Hmm.
We were saying, oh, in fact, we weren't even giving names. We weren't even giving genders. We were saying a man in Phoenix, in his 70s, or no, not even. We were saying patient in their 70s died in Phoenix.
Hmm.
And so, could the death tolls being inflated? Sure, why not? Especially if you're doing it with elderly. You grab some people that are uh, what's the word I'm looking for? That already have underlying conditions and they were already in precarious position anyway. And if they die, how hard would it be? It's like, oh yeah, chalk them up to the virus. Maybe, but even if they're real, I'm sorry. I did a thing 2 weeks ago where I was just lashing out. I'm going, look, that doesn't even, the numbers for this virus aren't even cracking the bottom 20 ways to die in the United States. Not even the bottom 20.
Hmm.
You, like, for example, right now you have a 1 in 250,000 chance of dying in the United
Right.
States from the virus. 250,000. You have a 1 in 25,000 chance of being killed, just being shot by somebody. That's actually higher than I thought it would be.
Hmm.
Like 1 in 25,000. That's 10 times. You have 10 times more chance right now of getting shot and killed by somebody, or like 1 in 50,000 just walking down the street
Getting
and
hit by a car or
getting,
whatever.
yeah, getting hit
Yep.
by a car. And just when I listed all these things and I'm going, why is and no one is even resisting. It was like this giant peer pressure wave that swelled over the country. It's like, once the NBA closed, then baseball closed, and then football season, and then the golf and NASCAR. And it's like, really, you close golf? It's freaking outside, and they're not even near each other. Or but no, so like there's this weird paradox. You can golf. The golf courses are open, but you can't do tournaments.
Right.
You can drive your car around a track, but you can't have a crowd there, and it just goes on and on. So anyway, yeah. Do I think there's something else tied to this? Could it be tied to us? Yeah, maybe.
What's the big event that you
The big event could
believe
be
could be
why the hell
happening?
not? It was
Um,
something that I predicted 2 years ago, which is I said that I go sooner or later because our numbers just kept getting bigger and bigger. I go sooner or later they're going to have to get on top of this. So what do? Do you fess up or do you spin it in a way that you want to spin it? You come out and I say in fact I joked. Now I'm regretting it. I said whatever's going to happen. This was years ago. It's got to be bigger than flat Earth. You've got to actually just eclipse flat Earth entirely. I go probably just blow up a city or something,
right.
something big. And it's like this virus, like right now on CNN, 90% of the stories, literally 90% of the stories, you just go down the list, are tied to the virus in some way.
Yeah.
Nobody even wants to talk about anything else. And when you go to like Netflix, I don't know what it's like in your neck of the woods,
Yeah, we're
but like
seeing a lot of
Netflix.
preppers shows, things like
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
trending on Netflix,
Yeah.
it's all freaking outbreak, pandemic, contagion, doomsday preppers, 2012. I mean, 2012. My God, that movie's 11 years old.
Hmm.
Oh hell, Outbreak is 25 years old,
Yep.
and that's now in the top 10. Come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it's weird, super weird.
I mean, one thing I worry about is what no one really thinks about. What if something happens on top of this? Like, so we've got this crazy outbreak. Everyone's locked at home. What if there is the big earthquake in LA, or
Yeah, that was one of
an
my top
enormous,
five.
yeah, enormous terrorist attack? I mean, and that's not even. I'm not even coming from a conspiratorial point of view. I'm just
Oh yeah,
thinking,
yeah, yeah.
just
I mean,
like
that's
we're,
good writing, by the way. I mean, if you want, that's how the great stories go, where it's like, okay, there's this crisis is happening. You're going, oh, you're thinking, okay, we'll be able to resolve it, and as that's getting louder and louder, boom, you get blindsided with something that's absolutely out. It's like, oh no,
yeah, yeah.
now we're in trouble.
It does worry. It plays on my mind that, but yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe it's a kindness, and I said this a couple weeks ago. Bringing people home, and I have seen this. Where I am up in Seattle, there are families now that are together for the first time.
Mm.
There are families with smaller children that are walking around, and you can tell it's like there's kind of a warmth there where people are, and that's what if you want to have a mercy, let's say there was some big event, let's say, I'll give you a quick example. You remember the movie 2012
Yes.
from back in the day? That would be a perfect example, because one of those taglines, which was finally a realistic one, which was, how would the government tell you, that the end was coming? The tagline is they wouldn't.
Yep.
They wouldn't tell you. In fact, if anything, they would do what's happening here, which is, okay, we'll just put the families together. That way, again, if I was doing it, that way, no matter what happens, let's say it's a big earthquake. Let's say a San Andreas just dumps the whole West Coast, just the whole thing, and, power outages, and it gets really, really bad. The infrastructure, if you want to rebuild an infrastructure after that, it's way, way easier if the family is in one place. Because if it isn't, oh my God, especially, no offense to mothers, but they just go off the freaking rails. They're like, wait, where's my kid? He's 35 miles away. I'm not doing anything until, they're going to run over people to
Yep.
multiply that by all the mothers. So to have especially anyone high school age or younger, having them home, really a great idea, if you're going to build up for something after. That's my theory anyway.
Yeah. Interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Back to flat Earth.
Yeah.
So the actual who made it? I would be very interested to see what your perspective is on this. Okay,
yeah,
so
who made it?
The actual, maybe we'll just start with the actual physics of what we are standing on. So, is it a construction? Do you think it's a constructed? Thing?
Is it a physical construction or is it virtual? Is that what you're asking?
No, I was asking, is it a physical structure? We'll go down virtual, but yeah, so it's a physical thing. Basically, what I'm angling at is geology. There's no metal rods that we know of that we've seen or detected. We have rock systems deep, deep, deep down the earth. We have earthquakes. We have a very complex geological system that is below us.
That's good. Okay, so first off, who made it? Let's go into that real quick. You can only go down one of two roads: either an advanced civilization that's much older and much more powerful than ourselves, or some sort of deity. But at that point, you're really just kind of splitting hairs, because come on, if a giant golden spaceship all of a sudden landed somewhere in Paris, you'd have two groups of people. One group would say, "Oh wow, giant blue people. They do look like Avatar." Or the other group, which would be, we must form a church to the giant blue people. And
Right.
then a new church would found. I mean, there people would be worship them as gods, and there are other people would be like, oh wow, it's not anything like I look. I thought they'd be like Predator or something. But when it comes to the actual structure of the whole place, the design, very, very clever. And when it comes to let's look at the geologic side, which I love so much, which is because some people say, well, how thick, like how deep is flat Earth?
Yes.
Right? How deep would it be? And I go, I don't know. How deep is Earth? Your globe Earth, and of course people will go into, well, if you dig straight down, it's 4,000 miles till you get to the center. And I go, really? I mean, how do you know that? And they go, well, because we've seen, we've got these cutaway diagrams and blah blah blah, with the red and orange and yellow and white bands and all that stuff. And then I again, it was one of those things that I discovered, little scientific factoids as I'm digging into this, no play on words there, which was that the deepest hole ever drilled wasn't even half that. It wasn't 1,000 miles. It wasn't even 100 miles. It wasn't even 10 miles.
Is that the one in Russia?
Russia and or Germany. They both tried for it. 12 kilometers for you. I'll do kilometers. And they tried for years to get past 12 kilometers. Could not do it. And
why? Too dense?
No. For whatever reason, the bits, if you want to say it was just magma at 8 miles, which doesn't go along with their other models, they did the bits kept melting. Right. They couldn't get them past 8 miles, and they tried. I mean, they tried for a very, very long time, but 8 miles should not be the capper there. So when I tell people, I say, okay, if the deepest hole is drilled is 8 miles, I don't know. I mean, this place could be 50 miles thick. Do I think there's some subterranean things? Sure. But I also think there's things built in to stop us from going, any further than that. So, and of course, I always had the thought was, if you were military, and that's civilian, drilling with, bits that are going down 8 miles. If you were military, well, if you want to have some fun with it, I mean, technically you could nuke your way down to 8 miles, and you should be able to nuke your way past it, because, you can vaporize basically a mile at a chunk.
Yep.
The underground testing, you can just blow holes. I mean, that's how they build underground stuff nowadays. They just nuke the whole thing and build it in the cavern. But I think it's part of the system. I don't think you can go down indefinitely for obvious reasons. They don't want you to go down very far. There's negative reinforcements built into this place that that are very clever, that kind of make you dissuade. It turns you away, that makes it look like you're the one that's doing it. Antarctica would be a perfect example of that, which was, Antarctica, in our world, we'll call it, you want to call it the ice wall, you can. But as you're nearing Antarctica, icebergs usually will scare away a whole bunch of people. You get there, you get on top of the ice shelf, a couple hundred feet. And then as you're going through it, it ramps up to 14,000 feet. Most people don't know that most of Antarctica, even mainstream science, is at 14,000 feet high, which is twice that of altitude sickness, and for most people. And then there's nothing to eat. There's no plant. There's nothing to shoot. I mean, when you get in there, it's just barren. It just screams, go away. So eventually, you're like, yeah, just turn back. And that's the same way with everything. The altitude stuff that we deal with. Why can't people? Why can't a balloon go up forever? And you can breathe. While the air gets thinner and thinner and thinner until finally you turn away, until you have a rocket program, and then that's a whole nother thing.
Right.
So.
Why would their when they're digging the holes, why would their equipment melt if the Earth is hollow?
Oh no! I don't.
That's
think,
just a lie?
I don't think it's hollow. I don't think it's hollow. All right. So, do I think there's the magma system in place? Sure. Yeah. Why not? Volcanoes are real. We all know that. Now, what's below the magma system? Do I think there could be a hollow system under that? Sure. Why not? I mean, again, the easiest place to hide people is subterranean. So could there be some cooler spots? Yeah. I mean, like the deepest oceans, Marianas Trench. Could you put a because remember, you can do a cavern very, very small. You could put a very comfortable civilization under there. I think that's where most of the previous civilizations go. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one thing I should throw in there, which is I don't think we're the first people to rent this apartment. Not by a long shot, and loads of conspiracy guys will go along with that. I mean,
Yep.
Sunken City's off in Japan.
I used to be
City's...
right down the rabbit hole of ancient civilizations. That was my conspiracy theory that I bit into really hard. But
So I'm a big fan. I was a big fan of Ancient Aliens before I got into this. I mean, even though I thought it was a bit sensationalized, I gotta tell you, some of the old ruins.
Pretty amazing. Pretty hard to explain.
Pretty hard to explain. I mean, Ancient Aliens inspired me to go to the real pyramids. And I encourage anybody. It's like, look, if you have the means, freaking go and stand in front of them. Don't listen to the tour guides and just stare at the damn thing or things and say, yeah, they built these when? Because you're sitting next to Cairo. That's the thing that throws you. It's not just the pyramids. I mean, the pyramids is one thing, but when you're looking at, you drive through Cairo and you look at the people there and you're going, yeah, these are the descendants of this. No,
right.
Not a chance.
Right.
I don't know who built these things, but it wasn't these guys.
Yeah. I volunteered in 2013 to help excavate the Bosnian pyramid. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
I'm very familiar with that. That's awesome. You were out there?
Yeah. So I went there for 2 weeks. To be honest, I mean, this was the main reason I went was because at that time I was hook, line, and sinker conspiracy guy, to the point where I was just becoming a pretty annoying, argumentative person because I just couldn't understand why other people couldn't see what I see. So I decided, well, this one seems really, really interesting. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to go see for myself. It was a great time. It was basically Camp Conspiracy, borderlining a kind of culty vibe, where people were kind of coming from all over the world with different opinions of, the giants made it. No, the ant people made it. That's why the tunnels are here. And just all these different kind of mythological things that they're taking is, there's a giant UFO deep, deep under. It's shooting out a laser beam at the top. And I think after a while, my mind frame was, we're the good guys, right? Us conspiracy people, we're the ones that see through the veil. We're the good guys. The Illuminati, whatever you want to call it, they're the bad guys. But the infighting, I found such a massive turnoff. And it also struck me how every single person just knew that they were right. the people with the laser beam shooting out, they knew they were right, and everyone else is stupid for not agreeing with them. The ant people, of course that's it. If you look at all this stuff and anecdotal evidence, and then the conspiracy started within this really small group that the guy who's actually showing us around, he's actually not an architect. He's actually an agent that's put in himself. And then all of a sudden there's this distrust. And I said, you know what? This is the mind frame that a lot of conspiracy theory thinking can send you down. And I think the underlining thing that I saw was this paranoid distrust that's really inbuilt with a lot of these thinkers, which I think it's wonderful to question everything. I still do, even though I'm not a huge conspiracy guy these days. But that to me just goes, okay, these are the people writing the blogs. All those amazing YouTube videos that are so gripping. I'm like, these are the people. And you think that they know something wise and deep, but they were just really good at putting shit together on YouTube. And that kind of, for me, put me off. And in terms of the actual evidence that the Bosnian Pyramid provided, I'm not a geologist. They show pictures of these block-like shapes, but they were all really inconsistent. So if you were having one builder, some are, I don't know, a few meters wide, some are almost 50 meters wide. And then, I don't know, whenever I asked questions, they were explained in very airy-fairy ways. A lot of energy stuff, and a lot of Bovis meters that they said. And then I asked, what is Bovis? And it's like, well, it's energy that they can measure. It's spiritual energy. And then I said, well, how do you find that? And they demonstrated with a crystal and a piece of string. And
oh no.
And I'm like, wow, okay, these are the foundations. Okay. So it kind of, for me, set me a little straight. And to be honest, there's a lot of weird stuff about that Bosnian Pyramid, but I'm not 100% convinced it's created. So
got it.
Yeah.
The spiritual energy thing, when anyone tries to tie that to anything, no offense to the people who are in tune, it's like, come on, you can't use that all the time for everything.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's kind of like a lot of the time. I was going to ask, which way do you lean, the aliens or the God side? Because I just think God is a bit of a cop-out answer for why this was created, personally.
People, it's funny. Not a lot of people ask me, which way do I go, the aliens or the God side? Because I don't necessarily believe in aliens anymore.
Really?
Because not in the traditional, okay, these guys are from Jupiter, obviously, and these guys have 3 eyes, so they've got to be from Venus, and all the Twilight Zone stuff. Because for me, the planets are just lights in the sky. Now, do I believe in interdimensional travel? Sure. Why the hell not? I mean, the average person doesn't even understand that you have music flying around you in different radio stations that you can't hear and television stations that you can't see.
I love that analogy. Try describing infrared to a caveman. They'd be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" But it's there.
Absolutely. And tech. I mean, hell, 20 years ago, trying to explain to kids, it's like 20 years ago, we didn't even have HD.
Yeah.
We had crappy television. We didn't even know it. Until it came out. So, but do I think there's 2 things? Okay. Do I think there's things flying around there in ships? Yeah, I do. I can see them all day long with infrared or night vision binoculars. This is amazing stuff flying around at all times. I thought it's like, you can see it all day long. I used to skywatch when I was out in Colorado for a number of years before I got into flat Earth, and it's like, wow.
You saw some cool shit?
The what?
Did you see some cool shit?
Yeah. I mean, initially, because it was a British guy of all things. He said he was talking about stuff, and he was silhouetted. And at the very end of his interview, he goes, you want to see some weird stuff? He goes, get a freaking night vision thing and start looking up at the sky and something you see. I'm going, that sounds like a wager. So I went and I went through different night vision stuff, and I got these night vision things. I'm looking up there, and the first night I'm going, oh, this is so boring. Yeah, you can see like there's way more satellites. There's just so many things flying around, but they're obviously satellites because that's what we're told. And then I go back the next night, and I'm watching the satellites, and I'm going, it's so boring. And then all of a sudden, the satellite just stops. It just slows down and like it's lost. And then it's like, and then it makes like a hard right turn and goes ballistic at a rate of speed I've never seen before, all without any sound. And I'm going, what's that?
Yeah, right.
And
Uh-oh. I think I've lost you. Damn it. Always at the good bits.
And am I still there? Uh-oh.
Yep, got you back. Got you back.
Testing, testing. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Damn,
So
right at the
the
punchline.
well, no, that's because they're listening.
Yeah,
The
true.
the no, they it took off at a rate of speed, and I was like, what the hell was I looking at just then? And what's interesting is they fly at a level, they fly about twice, at least twice the height of commercial airliners. I was in this perfect place where I was next to an international airport, so I saw inbound and outbound, very easy to tell the difference, and you could see those things clear as day with in night vision. And these things always fly, and I think Steven Spielberg was making kind of a joke about it because they fly about the same distance to where about the same size as stars in a lot of the cases. And I remember this one thing from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and everyone laughed, and I get it now, where the spaceships, as they were flying around the mountain, some of them got in the form of a Big Dipper, and the Big Dipper kind of slid across the sky, and Richard Dreyfuss laughs, and people laugh. Things like, oh look, it's a Big Dipper. No, they could absolutely do it if they just throw it in neutral, whatever's up there. No one, you could not tell them from stars. You would not be able to tell them because you can't zoom in far enough to see them.
Hmm.
But my God, there's a lot of stuff flying around up there, and they do this. I mean, I almost think they were. It's not like they were military. It was like they were commuters. It's like
Right.
they had their own freeway system, and people were just going home and driving back. And there was a group that would fly at night that I called driver's education. I don't know if you have them driver's education where you are.
No,
They
not that I know of.
send this.
Oh, lost you. Sorry. One moment. Lost your audio.
Uh-oh,
There you
really?
go. Got you back. Got you back. They're listening,
Okay.
Mark. They're listening.
Okay, yeah, they are. So there would be a squadron of anywhere from 3 to 15, and they would all be like tethered together to where they were just whipping around the sky. And people are going, "Oh, it's birds." I'm going, "Those are not freaking birds." I go,
Yeah.
"They make no sound, and they go from horizon to horizon in like 30 seconds." It was just brilliant, and they reminded me of the first the first time a flying saucer was coined, which was only about 100 miles from here, where a Cessna pilot was flying above a tree range, and there were a bunch of UFOs in like a V pattern below him going across the tree line. And he said they looked like upside down teacup saucers. And
Hmm.
he goes, but they seemed like they were connected by something invisible, you know. And I call him driver's ed. I think it's great.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, I saw. Oh, sorry, off base for a second there, which is, so do I think there's aliens? No, I just think there's older versions of us.
Right.
Meaning,
That's what I was going to ask. All these
yeah,
stories, but you don't believe in aliens. So you just think they're more advanced
I just
humans further down the line.
yeah. I think that everybody has their time here. Who knows? Maybe we're we're at our moment now, where you have a certain amount of time before, and once you figure it out, I think that also has something to do with it. If you're at a technology which is just about to figure out where you are, I think you are moved off, kind of like a graduating class.
Hmm.
You don't have to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here, type of thing. And then because we have to move another class in, and how that transition goes is anybody's guess. Now, those whoever's flying around up there, though, they didn't. I don't think they built this place. I think they're just either they lived here. They could be superintendents. They could be maintenance people, or who knows? Maybe they're just previous civilizations. But what I like to tell people is that whoever they are, there's rules they have to follow. And what I mean by that is they're not allowed, for whatever obvious reasons. And look at Star Trek Prime Directive, which is you can't just land in somebody's main square, town square, come out, take a couple of selfies and sign autographs, and hey, everybody, and then take off. I mean, you would make way too much of an impact.
Hmm.
And so they don't. I think there's some real rules to follow, which is, I'll throw at you really quick. The I ask people, it's like, what do you think the most popular, most famous UFO sighting is of all time? And some people say, well, it's Roswell or something like that. And it's like, no, it's not. It's 1561 Nuremberg. And it's got its own wiki entry,
Hmm.
as a matter of fact, which is wonderful day in Nuremberg, Germany, crystal clear day, two huge armadas. In fact, it was on Ancient Aliens. two ancient armadas just showed up and just started hammering on each other over the city. And Nuremberg was a big city back then, for an hour, to where, an hour is a long time.
Hammering on each other meaning fighting?
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
fighting.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, you can say, and to where, to where the artists, they had newspapers back then, and the artist came out and drew the whole thing in great detail, and they had no reference to it though. There was no science fiction back in the 1500s. They either thought it was some biblical thing. The interesting thing was, after that full hour, a single giant angular black craft, and they left this out of Ancient Aliens. I don't know why, but I think I know why. Where it just pulled in between the two of them. Those two groups scattered, and this thing hovered for a while and then flew off. Do you know how many questions that whole thing raises? It's like, okay, who are these first two guys? Why were they fighting? Who was the third group that showed up? Why were they scared of them? Were they the cops? Were they the UN?
Hmm.
Who the hell were these guys? And of course, my big question, which other people don't ask, is like, what sort of response time is an hour to that? I mean, they could have leveled the city in an hour. It was amazing. And so yeah, you can look.
Yeah,
they've
I
got
haven't heard of
woodcut.
that one. Yeah, I'll
They
look
they
that up.
ran it's still in the museum, but you can see the wiki picture. It's part of my slideshow, which is the woodcut of the whole thing that happened that day. And to this day, it's just overlooked. I don't know why.
Hmm.
But it's again, why would it take you guys an hour to get there? It just blew me away. I mean, seriously, you would have finished your breakfast, you had
Yeah.
a smoke, you're still watching. It's like, still at it. Yep, still at it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
amazing.
So which way do you lean for the creator of this
Oh,
flat earth?
the what?
Which way do you lean for the creator of this flat earth?
Okay. Do I think for me it's a little more complex. Do I believe in God? Yeah, I do. Do I think that the highest level of God built this place? Or no, but I think he subcontracted out the work. Meaning, I'm a big believer that you can get that the God. Ugh, I'm getting into areas I don't usually get into, but I'll do it for you.
Please do.
Which
Thank you.
is I don't think it's enough if you're God. We always like to think in human terms. We're thinking of God and make Morgan Freeman God and whatever. But I don't think that the God would just be satisfied. It's not interesting enough to just create a civilization or a series of civilizations that are in very basic stages of evolution, whatever. Maybe that's not the right word. Of whatever their technological advancement. I also think that it's more interesting to create a lesser entity, maybe a splinter of God, to oversee this. Meaning, so it's not just interesting enough to see how this develops on its own, but what if we created a god or a deity with a random variable to it, which would kind of play into some things. The Old Testament. It's like, why did the Old Testament version of God seem to be a child with a temper tantrum most of the time? Maybe God is in a, or whatever
You mean like
deity
his
you want
his
to call.
wraths and things like this doesn't please me, so he created a flood
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff?
Why
Right.
not? I mean,
Hmm.
think of all the early myths and legends you heard about the world being simpler and easier. That all the continents, for example, were all one big giant Pangea supercontinent, which also doesn't really make a lot of sense on a globe, but it does in our flat model. And then things got spread out, or the fact that the early myths that the sky would get light and dark, but there was no sun and moon, which is interesting because that's what we used to do in our early simulations. And people forget, I know you're not old enough, but the early versions of our video games didn't have a sun and the moon. The sky just got lighter or darker because you just made the sky lighter or darker. It was only later that was like, well, let's put in a sun. That's kind of ornamental. People, the star, they say, well, what are the stars and the moon and the planets? I go, it's just the biggest, oldest, most elaborate clock ever that predates language. That's really all the sky is a giant ornamental clock system
Hmm.
that you don't
Okay.
even need a language for. And back in the day, if you watch it long enough, you'll pick up a few things. It's like, oh yeah, because in fact, I had a girl ask me just a couple days ago. She asked me, she goes, why not make it same sort of question? She goes, why not make the sky black?
Hmm.
Like, are you kidding? Human beings hate that. It's black. It's scary. You get no perspective at all. I go, that'd just be depressing. You'd learn nothing. It's like black. I mean, plus the nighttime would be terrifying. And I mean, because if you didn't have torches, what the hell would you do?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Space. Is there space? Outer space. Does it exist? What's on the other side of this snow globe?
okay. Is there space as you know it? No, is not what you think it is. For the same reason, I'll use the Carl Sagan quote. It's like he goes, "If space is what we think it is, wow, it's awfully empty. There's not a lot there." He goes, "It seems like a lot of waste of resources." Um, the illusion of space is what I like to tell people. It's kind of like a planetarium. If the illusion of space fools 99.999% of people, then you go with the illusion because it's way more efficient. So you create the illusion of space, and then you can tell people whatever you want, or better yet, have the people tell their own people whatever they want. They can just make up stuff. I mean, the zodiac system. The stories that revolved around all the zodiacs, just amazing. Um, However, does it make it any less relevant? Because two people have said, "Oh, are you killing astronomy?" I go, "Well, kind of." Are you killing astrology? No, not at all. Because like there's an example, which is look, the stars, everything you see is just lights in the sky. It's much, much, much closer. It's not millions of light years away. It's right there. But does it mean anything less to people that are looking into your future with astrology? No, it makes it way more intimate. In fact, it makes the universe much more manageable. You don't have to come. I mean, think about it. If to create a solar system model, think of all the stuff you need to use. I mean, forget the globe can't even exist on itself. You need a solar system around that, galaxy around that, a universe around that. You need geometry and trig and calculus and quantum mechanics and all sorts of fun stuff. You don't need any of that with ours. Now, to your question though, which is what's outside of this place. So if it's not space, so if space, you're just looking, in the sky, what's outside of here. Um, if you asked me 3 years ago, I would have said, I don't know, man. But what I've kind of settled into is because I'm a big believer in dualism, which is you cannot enjoy or even appreciate something without seeing its opposite.
Yeah.
Light
Light and
without
dark.
shadow, hot without cold.
Ones and
But
zeros. Yep.
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, binary.
Yep.
And that I think is the same thing here. So for me, I always love the lowest common denominator, which is why my stuff, I design it for anyone.
Hmm.
Which is what's the lowest common denominator of this world? And no, I don't mean physically, carbon or anything like that. I mean conflict. And that seems to be the running thing. Doesn't matter how beautiful, how powerful, how talented, how rich you are mired in conflict almost permanently, meaning the rich, all they care about is money and everybody else that has money. If you're beautiful, you're looking in the mirror constantly. If you're talented, one of my favorites is people don't know. All rock stars want to be athletes, and all athletes, they want to be rock stars. Why? Why would you want this? It's because the level of contentment built into us is almost impossible to achieve. I don't care. Even if you're a Zen master floating above a rock in the Himalayas, you're still going to have to deal with mortality sooner or later. You're going to have that last bowl of soup and you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
So if this world is 99% conflict, inescapable conflict, then whatever's outside of here has to be the opposite, meaning an unlimited universe, an unlimited realm. And then you get into the why, and I'm not going to give you the exact why. It's like, why? Okay, why build this place? Why even build it? If forget about the Illuminati, let's go a whole octave
A few
higher
steps
than
up.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, why build it if you're God? And what I try to tell people is you build it because without this you can't appreciate that other universe. And I throw it into something I wrote years ago, which was the wish machine, which was, we all know, you rub the genie's lamp, genie pops up. He goes, I'll give you 3 wishes. And you're smart. And you go, ha ha, sucker. First wish, I get 1,000,000 more wishes. And he's like, damn you. And then you go through your 1,000,000 wishes. No one can make it through 1,000,000 wishes. Because eventually you run out of novelty, which is one of the things I think the universe runs on. I think it's cyclical. So you just keep wishing for things, right? And we've all fantasized about it. What would I wish for? And you wish about all this stuff. Well, eventually, what happens when you know, again, no one's ever gotten to do it here. What happens when you reach that logical conclusion, which is you run out of wishes? You literally run out of ideas. Your imagination is tapped out. What do? You go to the genie and you say, "Hey, I'm running out of ideas. You got anything?" And he
I'd
goes,
wish for a
"Yeah."
better imagination.
Well, yeah, it's a nice idea, but it's good. Actually, that's pretty funny. But it still has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
It's got to be grounded in something. And even if you wish for imagination, eventually that's going to be tapped out.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think it's infinite.
Just
And
kidding.
so he says, "Okay, I got something. You go to this place here. You spend 70 to 90 years. It's really horrible. You're going to complain about everything. It's going to suck, but at the end, when you're done, when you come back, everything is going to be great." And he says, "Yeah, but there's a catch." And it's like, "Really? What's the catch?" The catch is you won't even remember this conversation because you can't. The saying is you can't have your cake and eat it too. Well, it's a stupid metaphor, but it means you can't have your cake, eat it, and still have your cake. So even if you went to this world, I mean, people would be jumping off of bridges like lemmings. That was the case as soon as something got even remotely hard. So that was the case. It's like you sign the waiver. I think it's completely voluntary, and that's how you get in. And
So it's like a training ground. This is like a
or
school, a training
or a
ground
school,
for
yeah,
our
like
evolution, our spiritual evolution. And it sounds to me like you're almost describing kind of like a heaven realm of souls, where we decide to incarnate, and then on the outside of the globe is basically the metaphysical realm. That's kind of what it sounds
sure.
like to me.
Sure, it does feel like that because I've been trying to dice this thing up as many ways as I could, and if the world can only be really only one of three things, either entertainment, and which can't really be because not a lot of people are having fun, confinement like a prison, but if that was the case, well, it's a really nice prison, and
It's pretty
it
beautiful.
doesn't.
Yep.
That's very beautiful. In fact, runs really really well without us.
Mm.
And not to steal the line from the Matrix, but it does. And so it feels kind of like a balance. It feels like school. It
Yeah.
feels like we're here to learn a perspective, whatever it is, and then we go back and do what we're going to do. And I think it's cyclical. So the question. Sorry, let me end this part with this, which is I've heard this question many times over the years, which is if God showed up, what's the first question you would ask God? And so many people are like, "Why do you let bad things happen to good people?"
Mm.
It's like, "Oh, it's a stupid question." And I go, "Why?" Because it's not a bad thing if you volunteered for it, meaning he's off the hook. All
Mm.
he has to do is show you the waiver. It's like, you signed this.
Yeah, like
Remember?
why would you ask? It's like getting on a scary ride or something. And why do you let people be scared? It's like, well, they
Yeah.
lined up.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so anyway,
Interesting.
that's what I think we are.
So,
I think it's
so I guess you lean more towards the divine, ultimately,
I do, but not in the. I mean,
conventional.
I'll give you a quick. I was raised born again Christian,
Mm-hmm.
but when I got into tech, did tech support and software training for years. I didn't. I fell away from that and never went to church. But getting into this, Flat Earth has brought so many people back to spirituality, and I say that as a general term. I meaning they may not. They have a different view on the ethereal, one of your terms, than they would otherwise. And so I cannot condemn any of the five religious houses, nor can I fully embrace them because I think they all have pieces to the same puzzle.
Yeah.
And I think that's deliberate.
Seems to me though that the flat Earth movement has deep roots in Christianity. I mean, I've my friend has now that is a flat earther. He claims he is now a Christian, and flat Earth got himself into it. And I've seen lots of videos where it references the Bible, and to me that almost seems like that's where the agenda of this movement is. It's a Christian agenda.
No, it just unfortunately it kind of that was one of the byproducts of it. Maybe byproduct isn't the right word. It's the demographics of wherever you find yourself in when you do flat Earth. Because I've talked to people from all different religions. However, in the United States, well, you're going to run into a lot of Christians, and in
Yep.
England, you're going to run into a lot of Christians, and so on and so on. Um, The other thing that Christianity seems to I wrote about this in the book. I said Christianity kind of has an advantage over the other four because Christianity goes over a lot of the structure of the world. And if you want to get into the non-canonized books like the Book of Enoch, but the straight up King James Bible, the reason why the Christian community latched onto it so quickly is because there's only one verse that even touches on, even hints at a globe, and it just uses the word circle, which I thought was interesting. And the rest of it is very, very, you know, hints more towards, you know, the flat snow globey model. And so they were the first ones. I mean, I did not reach out to them, but yeah, at least 50%, at least 50% of the flat Earth community are strong Christians. In fact, they even have conferences. There's been flat Earth conferences I wasn't even invited to because I wasn't Christian enough.
Interesting.
which was weird. It was like, really? I mean, seriously, unless you're, but you know, and I can do chapter and verse now, but unless you can do a certain level of chapter and verse, nope, you're not invited.
Right.
But it's not agenda. It's just they are latching on to it way more tightly than other groups, because they were like, look, if their faith was already 90% sure, now it's like 97% sure.
Right.
You've given them a whole nother reason to believe in the Almighty, and they're not letting go.
Yeah. Okay. Accusations of you being a government agent, Mark Sargent. Where did all this start? Why?
I was wondering when you would get to that, because you were talking about the Bosnian thing and how people get accused of being agents.
Yeah.
Most of that's political.
Is that Math Powerland's doing? Is that where it all began?
Not just Matt. There was a guy that did way more damage than him. His name was Eric Dubé.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
He wasn't in the documentary. Matt was one of the guys that jumped on. In fact, I've still got an email from Matt from 5 years ago where he said, you're going to go along with what Eric and I say, or we're going to go after your credibility. And I said, I don't even know who you guys are. Why are you picking on me? This is awful.
He sounds like a dickhead, by the way. Math Powerland. Math Powerland sounds like an absolute dickhead.
He's not great.
Calling you out, Math.
Matt.
My flat earther friend, he's on the Math Powerland bandwagon. And when I was questioning him, why do you believe this stuff? He kept sending me Math Powerland videos. And I just watched him. I was like, well, he's a narcissistic egomaniac, and he's a failed actor. He just likes the sound of his own voice and does dramatic monologues. And then he's like, oh, he actually is an actor. I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, look, I don't know the guy. I'm sure he's nice, but he seems very combative and very dicky.
He is a very traditional conspiracy type guy. He's from Montreal, Canada. He's very artsy.
His art's not even that okay. Well, look, he is a good painter, but when he says that is there any evidence of him working for NASA? Because I couldn't find any.
No. As a matter of fact, I was like the first person to say, because I knew his story. You know, you watched the documentary. I mean, I knew his story. I could tell his story better than he could, and thank God for us, he could never do a decent interview in his life. But the thing, I think it was only partially true. Do I think the party happened with the NASA in play? Yeah, I do. Do I think that Matt actually got paychecks from NASA? No. I think the guy in the Hamptons, the party that he was at, I think that guy recognized that Matt was a hell of a painter, and he had Matt, because Matt was clear as telling people that he was helping paint that guy's house.
Yeah.
And Matt does not do short paint jobs. It's not like you're painting a wall green. He goes in and paints these huge, amazing murals. And so I think like that degree of separation where it's like, okay, fine. The guy that worked for NASA was paying you to paint his house. That doesn't mean you work for NASA.
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, it sounds better when he says it. Now, could I prove it one way or the other? No. But it didn't matter because he just faded into the woodwork. I mean, again, like the producers, and every producer I talked to, they wanted to talk to him so badly. Even the director of Behind the Curve, they found him absolutely terrifying because he was just so wound up and just so loud. And yet they still wouldn't, they still to the bitter end were trying to approach him, and finally they just gave up, said, you know what, let's just use his YouTube clips. without his consent, screw it, he can sue us.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah. So are you a government agent?
no. If I am, and anyone that spends 5 minutes with me should know. I mean, hell, you probably know
No,
that by the
I
time
don't.
you're
I
done with
don't
this.
buy it. I don't buy it.
No, I the what I try to tell people, I go, if I am the greatest secret agent in the world. If I am an agent, because it's like, okay, when am I going to reveal my
What?
big my big card?
And so, if this government agent secret thing is true, what are you accused of peddling? Misinformation or bringing out the flat earthers so the government can keep an eye on them? What is
Oh,
the
yeah, exactly.
what's
Yeah,
the goal? I can't quite get my head around the goal.
I know.
What is
But
the goal?
believe
What
me,
is the story? What's the
yeah,
narrative?
what killed me was that rumor has will not die.
Yeah.
Oh no. Eric brought it up literally in 2015, and Eric Dubay, and he had enough followers that they would not. I mean, to this day, I've got people that say, "Oh yeah, Mark Sargent, he's obviously an agent," because as you know, the rumors are powerful in the internet, and it's tough to squash them. And so I just go the other way. I pick up a few tricks from the movies, and it's like, oh no, it's like, no, I am the greatest secret agent
Right.
ever.
Right.
So
Well,
don't call me, just any agent.
what would if Agent Mark is yeah, again the narrative, what are they accusing you of doing? How do you jeopardize the flat earth movement?
Oh, how do I jeopardize it?
Yes. Well,
Um,
if what like the narrative that they're peddling.
oh yeah. Well, that's just it. They can only go so far, because a lot of people have asked him. They say, okay, how is he hurting us? I've done I've done more interviews, and this is not me being egotistical. I give a decent interview, and so people just keep calling me. I've done more interviews than every other flat earther combined at this stage, and and I don't say no to anybody. It's not like I cherry pick. I've done everything from kids that are in eighth grade newspapers, all the way up to major networks. And I got to go do all sorts of fun. I did a commercial in your country, just
Hmm.
just because we had people in sports bet that were ours.
Right.
That's
Okay.
that's
Interesting.
how I
Yeah.
got it. So no, I mean, I haven't heard anything ever. It's mostly, not to use a street term, but they hate you because they ain't you.
That's how
That
it looks from the outside. That's how it
it's
looks.
mostly,
But
yeah,
yeah.
it's mostly ego and jealousy. Everybody, the people that want to play well with others, and we've got some great. I mean, the people that did the conferences, like everyone you saw
In the
in the
film.
documentary, I'm in contact with all of them.
Hmm.
We're all, it's a pretty close knit group. There's people on the outside that want to be in, and for whatever reason they think they can do their own thing, and the politician rules apply there, which is easier to tear people down than build yourself up.
Right.
So it's easier to, my opponent, he sucks.
Yeah.
You say that, and because people don't care if you say, oh, I'm great, I'm the greatest candidate. People don't want to hear that. They want to hear the dirt.
Yep.
So
Mark, I've got a few more questions, but we've kind of come up to an hour and a half. Do you have time for a few more, or you kind of want to wrap it up?
I got another 15 minutes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to get to the doco. Are you happy with how they portrayed you in that film?
Me, sure.
Yeah.
I think they were actually fairly kind with me. They went after Bob and Jaron pretty hard.
Is
and they
that
took
Bob
shots
from Globebusters?
Bob from Glowbusters? Yeah, they took cracks at him. The director of that film hated Flat Earth,
Yeah. Okay.
which actually worked in our advantage. But yeah, he hated Flat Earth a great deal, and not for the reason you might think though. Yeah, he was a science guy, but the reason he hated it was because of that 12-year-old kid that was asking me a question when I was on stage.
That was
The
one thing I
sec-
wanted to mention. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, once that kid asked that, I mean, I didn't even know. I heard this in the director's commentary. He was talking about it, and that kid walks up, and they said, yeah, this is when we all decided to take a stand against Flat Earth. It's like, what? It's like, I hung out with these guys for like 7 months, and we did all sorts of things together, and yet that was the turning point for them. And
Have to say, it shook me a bit.
Oh, really? You also didn't...
Not because that, I guess, with my friend that I've discussed many times, a lot of it's like, well, where's the harm? People can believe whatever they want. I mean, just the stories of religion are wacky enough. of many of them. But
Yeah.
I think it was not just the kids, but then when I heard like third generation pulled out of school, being homeschooled by
Mm.
people who that I think that is just a bit like a kid believing flat Earth, whatever. But parents kind of pulling their kids out of the education system because the conspiracy is so deep and you can't trust the teachers.
Sure.
That kind of worries me because I just feel like maybe those kids aren't getting. They're not really thinking freely for themselves. They're being peddled a narrative that is not proven. That's not. I mean,
No,
flat Earth
no, no,
is not proven.
no. I got you. I got you.
So I
And
worry whether they're not starting from the same starting point as kids of their their other kids. That was my kind of initial.
no, no.
Yeah.
You would not be alone. You would
Mm.
not be alone in that regard. And it, what I try to tell people is that first, we're obviously not peddling to kids.
Yeah. No, I get
We
that. Yeah.
we don't have any, we don't have any special kids program. And I joked in the book, but I was mostly poking because I want to see if science could come at me. I said, you don't have to worry about us, going after the children because we already have them. Meaning that, and by that, it wasn't meant to be super sinister, although it was a great tagline, which is the kids, as you get younger in your demographics, people are more accepting. We believe the world that is presented to us, which is why the Truman Show worked out so well, or the movie which they didn't talk about in the documentary, The Village by M. Night Shyamalan, which I thought was brilliant in that you basically told these kids, oh yeah, by the way, it's the 1800s and you're living in the woods and there's monsters. The kids are going to believe you,
Mm.
plain and simple. They're going to believe what you were told. And so when you skew down to like the u.gov survey, which was really, really interesting, which was done by a UK group, the 18 to 24-year-olds, and it really freaked out a lot of scientists, were skewing a full third against the globe. And then if you go underneath 18, it goes even higher. It's pushing like 50%, but only if it's anonymous. Meaning, if you ask these kids a question and they make sure they're not in a peer group, oh yeah, they'll answer it. But if you put them in a peer group, they start to, that
Conform.
conditioning
Yeah.
sinks in. There was a wonderful one done by a video game channel called Asmongold, where he did a straw poll, just really quick. He goes, fine. He goes, you want to talk about the flat Earth? Fine. Is the Earth flat actually? Let's do it. And he was registering about 120 votes a second. And at no point was flat Earth losing. In fact, it leveled out, I think, 53 to 47, flat Earth to not flat Earth. And this was a very young group of of kids. And so I can't really speak for the parents, the ones that homeschool, because honestly the ones that are doing the homeschooling are probably, they're not doing it just for flat Earth. They're doing it because of all sorts of stuff.
Right.
They don't trust any government. And what I try to tell them is, I go, make sure you teach them both. Don't
Yeah.
just teach them flat Earth. I go, teach them both. And which is the thing that I throw at people, even the people listening to this, which is, look, I'm not here to persuade you or convince you, or I'm sorry, convince or persuade. I'm just here to put a couple of ideas into your head. Do your own research, figure it out for yourself. I did the same thing. Nobody gets into flat Earth thinking it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Everybody hates it, including me. And that was not exaggerated from the movie, which was, everyone got into it because they wanted to shoot it down. And in the process of shooting it down, they became, it's like, all right, like me, I just gave up after 9 months. It's like, all right,
Mm.
I'll go the other way. And here we are.
I've got two more questions. Globebusters experiments. I actually have to take my hat off to these guys because they've actually got the balls to experiment the best
Sure.
ways they know how. And, it's more than just saying, well, this. They're actually buying the equipment. And however, I did want to talk about some of the experiments on the film Behind the Curve. The first one was that gyroscope one, and it seemed to prove that the Earth was curved. But their approach to it just seemed, well, that's a problem, and just like, well, that's calling it a problem seems like you're already approaching the data with a agenda. That's a problem for our movement. It's just like, well, you're not objectively looking. Another one would be the light experiment, where they did lift up the
laser. Okay, two things. One, we'll do the globe, or the Globebusters one, because that one, 90% of the people that even watched it didn't even know what the hell they were seeing. Which is so 15 degrees per hour movement. What's moving? The sky or the ground? We say it's the sky. Mainstream science says it's the ground. Which does the gyro detect? We don't know, honestly, which is why they kept trying. We kept trying to shield it with different things. In fact, we just acquired. I can tell you because I don't know when they're going to get. Well, now with the virus, who knows? They just acquired like a $40,000 gyroscope with a whole nother set of things. So they're going to try it. Now, the only thing I would have changed in the movie, which leads to your last thing, which was the laser test at the end. By the way, I love the fact that we did, oh my God, at least half a dozen different laser experiments in different parts of the world. They didn't want to show them. But the big thing we use isn't even lasers; it's long distance photography. But we won't get into that right this second.
Yeah, no time.
But the
So
laser
much to talk
experiment
about.
did
But
what?
there's so much to talk about. We won't can't no
I
time for
know, I
everything.
know.
But yeah,
That's all right. We can do another one later if you want.
great. Thanks.
So the laser experiment, did Jaron screw it up? Yes, he did. Did he piss off the producers? Yes, he did. Was there power of editing? Oh yeah, you bet. But did Jaron screw it up? Yeah. How did he do it? Okay, first off, the experiment was done twice. And they had to fly up the second time. That really ticked off the producers because, like Jaron, the first time where you saw that giant laser beam that was diffused, again, we had to learn by doing, and Jaron had to learn it, which was you don't leave the military grade laser on. You can only leave it on for like a minute or two tops. You just can't leave it on for 20 minutes or you just blow out the condenser. And that's what the first one did. And so he had to get another one. But when he went back to the same spot for the second one, it's like, wow, it looks like, he had to raise it up to do the curve. And it wasn't until I think like 2 months later, I watched Jaron doing a video where he actually drove out to the site during the daytime. And it was like, he didn't recognize it. It was like it's like, wow, it's like he's never been here during the daytime. He never did a dry run. He had never been out to that place ever before. He thought it was flat. He never had line of sight. He never had line of sight to begin with. And so it's like, why are you doing the test live in front of the cameras at night when you didn't even know where the hell you were? And it was like,
So he could have been in a ditch or something. Is that what you're saying? He could have
exactly.
been in a ditch or on a hill.
And I go, why'd you choose that spot? And he goes, well, it looked flat on Google Earth. I was going, oh God. I was like, so, and honestly, I did not know this until way later. And I was defending him even before I found that out. So now I was like, all right. So, but did he screw it up? Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, you bet he did.
So maybe a better way to do that would be on sea level, maybe like on boats.
Yeah.
Or something.
Oh my God, there was a test. A perfect example was we went out to Hungary. We sent a team out there with Guinness Book of World Records, and we shot. Oh God, like 2 of our guys almost died from pneumonia. This was like a frozen lake, and they shot 40 kilometers across this frozen lake with in fact, the military grade laser froze up, and they had to use their backup military laser. And they shot at 40 kilometers, and they hit everything great, and it was wonderful. And they didn't want to talk about it. Documentary did not want to use it. They absolutely. Again, I don't blame them, but here's the great part about it, which was, would I have changed the ending with Jaron thing? Yeah, but it was a funny stinger ending.
Yeah,
it was a good, and it made the audience feel safe. I went to the film festivals with the teams. In fact, they even sent me out because it did so well before it was picked up on Netflix that they sent me out alone to things, and they like made sure there were cams, doing live streams so that I didn't go off script.
Right.
And the audience felt safe watching it. Even the title, Behind the Curve, it's like, oh, we could laugh at flat earthers, and it'd be like, it wasn't pure uncut flat earth. It wasn't a propaganda piece by any stretch. So it was flat earther scientist, flat earther psychologist, flat earther astronaut, flat earther blah blah blah. And by the time it whipped you around enough to where by the time you got to the end, you had no other idea what the hell you were looking at because you were taken in so many directions. 20 minutes into the film, I was sitting next to people, didn't make sure they didn't know who I was. And I was watching them the first 20, 25 minutes. They didn't even think it was real. Literally did not think the film was real. They thought it was a piece of docufiction.
Right.
And then all of a sudden something happened on the screen and like it was getting too much. They're going, wait, I think there's something really scary on the internet and it's really big and I don't know anything about it. I'll give you a quick example and then whatever your last question is.
Yep.
Which is, so this was shown, the documentary was shown to an editor friend of one of the producers. They had no context. He had no idea what was going on. He showed it to him. And he goes, just watch this. At the end, the guy goes, wow. He goes, what sort of budget did you have on this film? I go, what do you mean? It's like, all those actors, they played it absolutely straight. He honestly thought that it was absolutely fake from beginning to end. He goes, and they're going, no, man. He goes, that conference happened. He
Yeah,
goes,
right.
dude, we were there for 3 days. So yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. This
Anyway,
final question, I think this is probably the most pressing and important question that I think the audience really wants to know. And
okay.
it's, did that romance between you and Patricia Steele
And Patricia Steer.
blossom into something beautiful, Mark?
When I was in, it's so funny because when I was in Auckland at a conference just recently, they were asking me, they asked me that. They pulled me into the studio. It's like, Mark Sargent, you and Patricia, what happened? It's like, oh God. Patricia's fine. She's pulled away for a little while because after the documentary came out, she really couldn't go anywhere.
Okay.
And the trolls were merciless. I mean, the internet trolls. I mean, come on. She's really pretty, and articulate and rich, and she makes YouTube videos about flat Earth. What do you think it was going to happen to her? They just descended on her. So, she and I haven't talked a little while.
Okay.
But she's fine. I keep tabs on her, and she's still down in Houston, and she's really, really great. And I'm so glad we got a chance to do everything. And I don't think she's gone. I'm hoping she shows up at the conference this year in Vegas, if we have a conference in Vegas.
Yeah, of course.
Right now, I'm not sure. But no, Patricia's great, and I loved every second of the time I spent with her.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark Sargent. There's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you. And if you do get the audio from this, I don't know if you recorded video and audio, but either way, could send it to me?
Absolutely, of course, I will definitely.
Okay.
Do you any plugs or anything that you want to do, or any kind of things that the audience might want to check you out or anything?
Yeah. I should probably plug something. All you have to do if you want to find any of my stuff is go into, well, you can type in my name into Google and Flat Earth, you'll find it, or just go into YouTube and type in Flat Earth Mark. That'll get you to my stuff. I've got a decent YouTube channel, 2 books on Flat Earth, which are on Amazon, couple podcasts, and just if you have any questions, here's the good thing, all my contact information is on every video I have, including my physical address, my email address, my social security number, my bank routing numbers, everything.
It's bold, very bold. Well, thank you, mate. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. And hopefully one day down the track we can do a follow-up.
Yeah. Happy
Awesome.
to do it.
That'd be great.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.